let's talk about boxes. On this channel, I spend a lot of time talking about the things that come in the boxes, about games as physical objects and cultural artifacts and mechanical metaphors and rules and systems. But when I do that, I have to pull out the games, set up the shots, set up sample turns, and it's November. I'm just really tired. So today, let's talk about boxes. Are they even important? Yes. But why are boxes important? I think that's an interesting question with a few different answers.
You have very little time to get someone's attention when they see a game on the shelf. And like a game is like not only competing for someone's attention at a store, it's competing for them for their attention like in their house. And so like we kind of think of these as two different things. But two things that are really similar to each other. And so you're really like in the world of all the things that you can do, of all the games that you can look at, of all the activities you could have. Like, how do you just convince someone to like pick your game?
The box is how you sell the game. It's a marketing tool. An attractive box cover will draw the eye. It is the first thing you see, and it might be the reason why you buy the game. Sometimes.
People bought El Grande and it looks like this. People didn't buy it because they liked the box art. It's not inviting. Even the people on the box don't look like they're having fun. Used to be, Eurogame box covers were just absolutely awash, with white dudes looking sad and or constipated. But that, of course, is a way of selling it. It markets these games as serious strategy games for adults. And this approach, sad, pensive, or constipated means it's for grown-ups, was not new. Not even in the board game space. The Bookshelf series put out by 3M in the 60s not only have more serious box art, but come in these hardback slipcovers. The implication is that they belong not in your closet or your playroom, but next to your books. A handsome, sophisticated object for people of discerning taste. These games, and especially Sid Sackson's Acquire, were a huge and often cited influence on the German designers of the 80s and 90s. So it doesn't really surprise me that the somewhat dry box art serves the same rhetorical purpose as it did for those 3M titles. The cover for El Grande signifies that this game is serious, and that's underlined by the presence of the names of the designers on the front of the box, Wolfgang Kramer and Richard Ulrich. Kramer was also one of the designers on That's Life, which, by the way, absolutely slaps, and the cartoony art communicates that this is not a serious game. Speaking of cartoony, the original edition of Glory to Rome looked like this? People often say it's ugly. I don't know if I'd go that far. It's certainly no Operation Husky. But when you put cartoony art on a small package, people are going to assume it's a light, silly filler game, like Munchkin or Guillotine, and not something widely regarded as one of the most intricate and subtle strategy games of its time. The blurb on the box, the seriously strategic card game, is there to argue with the box art, which I don't think I've ever seen before in any medium. Like, sure, I've seen movie trailers that mislead you as to what the film is like. For example, Mike Leigh's film Naked is a harrowing depiction of misogyny, abuse, and sexual violence. It's a heavy, difficult, abrasive film. And here's the American trailer.
What is a proper relationship? Living with someone who talks to you after they've bunked you.
Are they both the same size, or is one bigger than the other?
But I've never seen someone make that kind of trailer or poster and then argue with it to try to convince you that their own advertising that they made on purpose is wrong. But of course, the art on the Glory to Rome box does accurately reflect the look of the game. By all accounts, the game's colorful production did scare off potential players despite the rave reviews. leading to the successful but somewhat ill-fated 2011 Kickstarter. This new edition is very sleek and very serious, and it communicates that seriousness with this stark black cover, setting it apart from the previous edition. The funny thing is, I think both versions accurately reflect what Glory to Rome is, because it is chaotic, it is silly and swingy. It also has a lot of deep strategy that rewards serious play and study. The original art communicates the tone, but not the texture, nor the intended audience.
How do we like make everything in this game like the most itself it can be? You know, Quacks, I really admire the original art of that game, but I just think there's something that like was not connecting to the audience in the US and Canada in a way that just like it is like signaling a very sort of like medium weight Euro game type of game you're about to play, which is like cool for its like region and everything. But when we sort of like took over publishing it, I really like wanted to give it its like absolute best chance to succeed here. And I just felt like it was being held back by a certain look that wasn't like aligning to the gameplay as much, at least here. Maybe in Germany it like made a lot more sense, but here it just like did not quite feel right in terms of just sort of conveying the core feeling of like, oh my gosh, it's like a really dangerous like potion you're brewing and all of that, and the sort of like silly madcap quality to it was like not really reflected in that, and I think like it wasn't really reflected in the sales of the game. And so you know, it just Quacks always just felt to me like a game that like should be standing alongside a lot of these like classic titles like Catan and things like that in mass market stores and everything. And so the fact that it was like having a lot of difficulty doing that signaled to me that there was some issue holding it back. And like I intuitively, I think like was feeling the same thing. It wasn't like a big mystery as to what was happening, but that was my best guess as to what was holding it back. We've just had like very, very, very radically different like receptions in the hobbyist community to like some of our packaging decisions this year, and it's hilarious.
The hobby is so interesting as like as a market or a segment or an online thing. You know, so I mostly cater to the hobby market. You know, with my weird little zine games basically is what I'm doing. But the stuff that really takes off, that does really well, gets almost no like hobby attention. Like compare like as far even just something like metrics like you know, ratings and comments on BGG, I get so much more for games that sell so much less.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm glad you said that, because like I have that experience a lot too, where like in some ways it's like the BGG score is like inversely correlated to our sales or something like that. Like maybe not exactly that, but it feels that way sometimes. And yeah, you will get comments on there being like, I don't know if it's been released. And I'm like, we sold tens of thousands of copies of this game. This game's been out for like months.
Hobbyists will buy a game with a constipated dude on the cover based on word of mouth. But that's not going to fly for someone strolling past the shelves at a supermarket. Oh, look! There's a couple of people on this box. I haven't seen that kind of thing in years. There was a long stretch where box covers were just photos of people playing the games. Mostly this was a quick method to indicate its intended audience. Couple of kids on the box, games for kids. This one, kids can play with adults. And then this game is for people who really like Rodney Dangerfield, I guess? Let's flip it over. Okay, it's for yuppies. And you would think this is a comedy game, like a roll and move with jokes, but it's not. There are exactly 5 jokes, and they're all printed on the insert.
My psychiatrist too last week. For the first time I told him I got suicidal tendencies. He told me from now on I have to pay in advance.
It's a very light push your luck game with numbered tiles, like Lost Cities with screwage, player elimination, and incredibly obvious decisions. Now, Rodney Dangerfield did not design this game. The only reason he is on the box is that he was a big deal in 1985.
No, I'm old. I could go any minute.
No respect, no respect.
I got a kidney-shaped pool with a stone in it.
No respect, no respect.
Every move I make, they stop me. I think I'm winning, I end up a loser. Play the 7. 7?
Hey, let's get out of here. This guy's nuts. He's talking to the box.
They walked out of me. Who cares? And I'll play with you. Look at this. I worked out of myself.
These days, we don't really see celebrities on board game boxes. As we saw in my video on the Skittle series, it used to be more prevalent. Chuck Diker, the president of Aurora, told newspapers they chose celebrities like Don Adams so they could make an impact quickly.
Jack. Ace.
The kid's got it. All he needs is an easy 10 for a royal flush. Looks like the kid hasn't got it after all.
Skittle poker from Aurora. Sometimes you win,
and sometimes you lose your shirt.
And there's some scientific basis for this. The Neuroscience Center at the Wharton School used pupil dilation and eye tracking to test the effectiveness of advertisements with celebrities, with non-celebrities, and without any spokesperson at all. The celebrity products were chosen more frequently, and one argument the paper puts forward is that the presence of the celebrity instills greater confidence.
Greater pupil dilation is associated with lower confidence. In line with our prediction, we found that participants had a smaller decision-related pupil size when choosing a product advertised with a celebrity compared to those advertised with a non-celebrity or presented alone.
But there's a catch.
Celebrities gazing at the product would be more meaningful to the viewer and build in more confidence and an evaluation, actually, of the product itself. We found that, in fact, people do spend more time looking at the product, but only when it's paired with a non-celebrity gazing at the product. Celebrities, we tend to look towards their faces and less so at the product.
But I guess when the celebrity's face is on the product, we're gonna keep looking. You know, I want to be snarky and say, who would buy this? But I mean, I absolutely bought No Respect because of Rodney Dangerfield. I spent 3 months doing an hour-long documentary about the Skittle games because of Don Adams, so I guess it works. It turns out these two are influencers with millions of followers on TikTok and Instagram. That actually makes this another celebrity box cover. And we have our own source of celebrities in the hobby game space, reviewers and streamers whose endorsements do move the needle. After the YouTube channel Heavy Cardboard streamed a game I published, Cole Worley's Infamous Traffic, sales for that game got a huge shot in the arm. It also brought a lot of people to our other games, including my own work, which hadn't really gotten much critical attention up until that point. That stream absolutely enabled my success. A few months ago, sales for City of Six Moons, already my best-selling game, doubled essentially overnight after a review from Shut Up and Sit Down.
This is perhaps the very first game featured on Shut Up and Sit Down where setting up the game correctly is a spoiler. Showing how these pieces relate to each other is a revelation robbed. This is a solo-only board game with a rulebook that is written entirely in an alien language. And that initial reveal upon sitting down to City of Six Moons is its most disarming and funny moment.
And if I was trying to sell City of Six Moons in stores, even just hobby stores, I might be tempted to slap their cute little pair on the box or a quote from the review. I'm kind of glad that I don't sell in stores though, because doing that would diminish the box as a part of the game object, as a part of the experience.
Is the box a part of the game?
What we're really obsessed with is providing like a really singular like sense of what the game is, like a strong focal point.
Hot Streak is a board game that's packaged like a toy. In a way, the box is itself a kind of a toy. Its physical function is an integral part of the game. And it primes you to engage with the game like you would a toy, joyfully and playfully.
Ultimately, like a game is like an object in space, and you really do want like all of the packaging and all of the stuff that's like supplemental to like the thing that actually gets dumped out on the table and played to like be like funneling you into that direction and be contextualizing it for you.
In turncoats, the board and the bag are one and the same. This frames it almost as a folk object, like the traditional games that inspired its designer, and it puts you in that mindset. Even something like the box size can set expectations. Arcs comes in a pretty compact box. That form factor, plus the Kyle Farron art, says this game is approachable. Voidfall, on the other hand, is a beast. The huge box and its multi-level insert with its own instructions is daunting. It says that this will demand a significant investment of your time and attention. Arc says, you could probably pull me out on a weeknight, while Voidfall says, you better clear out your Saturday. Back in my freelance days, working for other publishers, my first several games didn't even come in boxes. They came in Ziploc bags. For a lot of folks, Ziploc games feel a bit fly-by-night.
This is my first game to ever come out in a box. It's a hex and counter game about the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. I originally called it the debacle, because that's what this nerd called it, because it didn't go well for him. My publisher said, you can't call it that. If people don't like the game, they're going to say it is the debacle. That wasn't a title, that was a warning. So we changed it to Von Moltke's Triumph, Fall of the Second Empire, 1870, which is a pretty standard war game kind of title. The publisher hired an artist who did a box cover, and the artist used the Eiffel Tower as a kind of synecdoche for France, and that's a pretty common thing to do with war games, but not war games about the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, because the Eiffel Tower did not exist in 1870, and people sure did point that out. They had a lot of fun with that. And the publisher paid to have a new box cover done with the Arc de Triomphe instead, and sent out replacements, but it kind of already had become the story of the game, where, oh, what is that game? Oh, that's the one with the Eiffel Tower. I wonder what else they got wrong. And, you know, I did get some other things wrong. It was an early design of mine, and there are little details about, like, order of battle and stuff, which don't really affect the model or the argument the game is making, but people came into the game already prepped to look for mistakes, and that's how they engaged with it. The box cover framed the way they played the game.
So that was my first box game. My most recent one is Belinda's Big Bonus, and I think I made a mistake with the cover. It uses the same art as the sixth book in the series the game is based on. It's my favorite of the book covers. It's really joyful, and it shows off the huge, crazy cast of characters, but it's very sexually suggestive, and the game isn't.
If you're expecting sexy stuff from this game, no, I didn't do that. The books actually focus a lot on sales meetings and travel logistics and admin, and that's what this game is. That's what I decided to do with this property.
Now, maybe it's not a big deal. It's a silly little game with crazy card powers. But when a game is trying to express something more serious, the box cover becomes a lot more important. One of the games I'm proudest to have published is Meltwater, a game of tactical starvation. In this game, the Cold War went hot. The survivors of this nuclear war flee to the only place that's still inhabitable, Antarctica. But there, the Americans and Soviets are still trying to kill each other. The things they were supposed to be fighting for are gone. There's no capitalism anymore. There's no communism. There's just nationalism, driving the human race to extinction. When I did the first draft of the box cover, I put a hammer and sickle on it. That's a pretty common synecdoche for this game is set during the Cold War. And the designer, Aaron Escobedo, said, hey, this is a very American viewpoint. This kind of frames the Soviets as the other, as the bad guy. You're kind of doing a nationalism there for the cover of my game about the evils of nationalism.
And I said, oh my gosh, you're right, I am doing that. That's gross. And then I changed it, because that's what you do when the designer tells you that the box art you came up with is against the entire point of her very political game. If I was to steamroll over her and do it anyway, I would not only have to be stupid, not only have to be a narrow-minded Philistine, but also grossly incompetent. Like, obviously I don't understand the game I'm working on and don't deserve to work on it.
Your goal in Meltwater is to kill all units of the opposing side, and you would think that makes this a game about combat. But the attack action always kills all involved units on both sides, then renders a hex unable to support life. Combat is always mutually annihilating. The game's not interested in modeling differing capabilities of Cold War armaments or troop maneuvers. It's not a war game at all. It's poetry, it's parable, it's anger. The world is dying, we could fix it, but instead we're doing this shit. The most efficient way to win is to just let people starve. Poison the earth around them, relocate them, cut them off from supplies. There's a reason it's called a game of tactical starvation. Starvation is the thing you do in the game. You're playing governments. Starvation is the thing governments do. In a post-industrial world, if people starve, if people are homeless, if people can't access healthcare, it is a deliberate choice made by those in power.
Then there are, in fact, enough spaces for every single piece that can possibly enter the game board to survive without a single drop of blood being shed.
Almost by double.
Almost by double. It's the only thing that is forcing you to engage in bloody conflict is the fact that you are directed to. That's it. My game says, in the logic of the Cold War, kill them.
Put another way, Meltwater's rules, the victory condition that pushes you toward annihilation, are in conflict with observable reality, with human decency. And I don't feel like it's doing this in service of knee-jerk complicity, do this bad thing, now feel bad about it. It's not asking us to be horrified of ourselves, but to be horrified at the rules. Not just the insane rules imposed by the game, but the insane rules imposed by those in power and normalized through our media. It's systemic horror. As a purely ludic object, Meltwater is quite blunt, but the point of it isn't how fun it is to play or how deep the strategy is. I don't think anyone plays the game for that reason. When I wrote the back cover blurb, I didn't talk about the mechanisms of the game or replayability. I talked about the horror. I talked about purposefully starving children as a political weapon. I mentioned that with a fraction of the money that goes to military budgets, we could end world hunger.
Publishing this game changed how I think about games. Publishing this game changed how I think about myself. Meeting Erin helped me figure out who I was, and she is one of the first people that I told that I thought I was trans. And during that early period when I was scared out of my wits, she was there for me and is a sister to me. So I'm not a neutral, objective observer. Grain of salt, but I think this is easily one of the most important games that I've ever published. And I wish I had done better with it. I wish this box cover had really framed the political nature of the game more. And I was really happy in 2021 when I got an email from Capstone Games asking, like, hey, can we do Meltwater? Because with their resources, I knew it would bring this game to a wider audience. So we told Aaron, Capstone's interested in publishing your game. Our license for it is expiring at the end of this year. If you want to go with them, we completely understand and encourage you. And I'm not going to do a detailed side-by-side comparison of the two editions of this game. If you want to know which one has better production values, that's the Capstone edition. That's not a surprise. I've seen the games that I publish. I know what my components are like. And I'm not interested in like which one has better cover art, because the Capstone edition has cover art and ours does not. Now, does Capstone's cover art resemble the splash page for a Shudder original that's got 2 out of 5 skulls? Yes, but it is unquestionably an illustration, and they got us beat there.
What I'm interested in is the question of how a larger company brings something like Meltwater, a game of tactical starvation, to a wider audience. How do you sell normal people in the hobby shop on a political art game that feels bad to play on purpose? How do you frame that experience for them? And it turns out the answer is you don't. You just pretend it's a normal game. The cover is focused on kinetic conflict, something which happens once or twice per game. The subtitle, A Game of Tactical Starvation, is removed completely. Instead of deliberate starvation being framed as the focus of the game, as Aaron's thesis embedded within the title, it's just a mechanism within what's being sold as a combat game.
2 players take command of the shattered remains of the superpowers, struggling for control of the ice. Simple diceless mechanics let players displace, corner, and isolate their opponent's survivors. Here, hunger is a crueler weapon than gunfire, and the barren tundra can only support so many souls.
The conflict isn't framed as being about nationalism, but about survival, because there's just not enough room and food for everyone.
There are, in fact, enough spaces for every single piece that can possibly enter the game board to survive without a single drop of blood being shed.
It's still the same game. It still expresses the designer's thesis through its mechanisms, which she framed very carefully and artfully in the original rulebook. All that framing is present in the new edition, which is basically word for word exactly the same, except for all the mistakes that Capstone added. So what does the box and the blurb matter? The Hallenspiel box wasn't great either. And after all, shouldn't works of art speak for themselves? But how does a game speak for itself? The language of games is mechanical and mathematical. It only becomes expressive and human when we use it to represent something. The names we give it in the rulebook, the components and art we use to bring it to life on the table, all of this is a kind of framing and is a core source of meaning for board games. When you strip all that away, all you have left is a structure. And that structure can be very beautiful, but it's not an experience.
Yeah, it would be like if you were like a composer and you're like, well, like I only care how like it looks on like a sheet music and I can just like see it all in my head, and so I don't really need to care about like the orchestra that plays it or whatever. But yeah, I like think of that as like, yeah, it's ultimately like a game is like an object in space.
The discs in Meltwater are radiation that gets added to the board every turn. In a literal sense, the box blurb is right. The ice can't support everybody. The rules dictate that you shrink the play area. But those rules, again, reflect the nihilistic logic and priorities of nationalism. And in that sense, the discs are also climate change, are also any existential problem ignored by those in power while they spend $1 trillion a year on the military. It's a grim joke that the only way these rules allow you to interact with that kind of threat is to make it worse. This essential tension reminds me a lot of what TTRPG designer Jade Dragon calls an expressionist game.
Expressionist games are negotiated experiences shaped by the unresolvable tension between mechanically imposed external worlds and passionate, inarticulate internal worlds. The rules are mediated through friction between the text and the players. The text of an expressionist game is frequently written from a hostile or facetious perspective. Frequently, the line between endogenous, diegetic, and hypodiegetic rules are blurred. The text insists on all of them with an equal weight and leaves it open to the players to challenge and argue with the rules.
This is a complicated thing to experience that gives Meltwater much of its power. If the box blurb highlighted the themes and arguments of the game, framed it as a satire, you would be prepped to distrust the logic of the game rules. It would help you get into that unusual experience. But by replicating that logic in the blurb, I think it does a disservice to the game. Sure, a box isn't a game, but it is the first bit of framing the audience is going to encounter. So, yeah, I think it's important to get it right.
You really do want like all of the packaging and all of the stuff that's like supplemental to like the thing that actually gets dumped out on the table and played to like be like funneling you into that direction and be contextualizing it for you.
But that's complicated by the box's function as a form of marketing, which under capitalism is often load-bearing and supersedes its function as a part of the game experience. If you market something as a weird political art game that feels bad to play, there is an audience for that, but it is a smaller audience than the people who want to have a fun ludic experience in an interesting decision space. So it makes sense, abstractly, for a publisher to market it as a normal game. I think there's a risk that you might end up with like a Mother type situation, but I do get it. Honestly, how we think about and approach boxes, both as an industry and an audience, has less to do with each individual game object and more to do with how we see games as a form, what we think they're capable of, what we think the market will sustain. That is changing. But it's going to be a while, I think, before a large publisher takes an art game and frames it as art.
I think the amount of care being put into these things, especially in like newer companies, has been really, really, really increasing over the past few years in a way that I find great.
Heck, there are Euro games where it looks like the people in the box are actually having fun, or at least regular bowel movements.
The explorations are like the aperture's widening a little bit, where it's like not just like really, really hobby focused or like a nature themed game and that's it. Like people are like doing more and more interesting stuff.
I'm going to close out the video with a recommendation, which I don't usually do, and that is I will recommend that you buy Meltwater from Capstone Games. Now, I know I have some harsh things to say about the presentation and framing, but Meltwater is still Meltwater. It's still an important, interesting game that I think everyone should experience. It can change how you think about games and what the form is capable of. Also, if you buy this, my friend Erin will get some money, and I want her to have money. So this isn't an unbiased recommendation, but it is an unqualified one. It's a handsome production, it's affordable, and most of all, it's a great game.
What's the matter, Rodney?
I don't get no respect at all.
It's just rapping, Rodney. Ain't that too tight? No, no. Rapping, Rodney. Get out of sight. It's just rapping, Rodney. Make no mistake, for